of ATM real estate. Bob has over 30 years of successful experience as a real estate practitioner. Bob, over the past few weeks, we've discussed and you've given our listeners great information on short sales, the real estate market in general, buying and selling, plus looked at some of the options that people have if they're upside down in their homes. This week, I'd like to discuss something that you shared with me that I really knew nothing about, and that's the foreclosure process. It seems many homeowners have been receiving a letter or notice in the mail about starting foreclosure. Can you tell us a little bit about this document?
This notice or document is called a notice of default. It is the document that starts the beginning of a non-judicial foreclosure process. Understand that foreclosure is a legal process by which a lender obtains termination of the borrower's right to remain in that property. Once a notice of default is recorded, the process begins and the race against time has started.
Now, when you say the process has begun, what exactly do you mean?
Well, the process is a timeline that the lender or the loan institution has to do in order to reclaim the property. The various phone calls from the lending institution may have went unanswered. The late notices that was mailed to that property, the lender has not received any responses. So most lending institutions do what most lenders do, and that is to start the process of foreclosure, which in itself, by definition, can be an ugly process.
Now, when you say the process has begun, how long does a homeowner have, or does it vary from person to person?
Well, it depends on the communication or lack thereof between the lending institution, the bank, and the borrower. If there was shared dialogue, then this timeline can be delayed. If the notices or phone calls went unanswered and there was no response, the notices went in the drawer in the cabinet, well, as far as the lender is concerned, that property is vacant.
What options does the homeowner have?
Well, there are several choices that the homeowner has when this process has started. One is called a forbearance, and the other is called a deed in lieu of. And just for the sake of discussion, we'll talk about forbearance.
Okay.
And what a forbearance is a special agreement between the bank and the homeowner to delay a process that we call foreclosure. And the literal meaning of forbearance simply is to hold back. And the lender can make an agreement to put the payments that the borrower has missed on the back end of the loan, modify that payment to where it's agreed between both borrower and lender, and you have a certain period of time to make these payments, maybe 6 months to a year. If the payment has been missed, then it does initiate the foreclosure process. Forbearance is only temporary if the borrower has temporary problems. For example, it could be a variable adjustable interest rate, which is unaffordable to the borrower. The forbearance is usually a solution, but not a permanent solution. It's a temporary solution.
Are there special qualifications to apply for forbearance?
Yes, there are. Again, it depends on that borrower's ability to pay. For example, if they turn in the documentation on a forbearance and the lender says you have a reduction in income and your payments may be half, then they can work with you. If there's no income, then on a forbearance, then the lender has a decision to make, which is probably not going to be granted. How does it work? The forbearance reduces the monthly mortgage payment, or a forbearance suspends it completely. During this period, usually between 90 to 180 days, you and your mortgage company will sign an agreement that will outline the forbearance terms, the length of the period, the reduced payment amount. If the payment is suspended, there is no payment, and the terms of the repayment.
Now, what's the difference in a forbearance and a deed in lieu of?
A deed in lieu of is a very different kind of solution. And I'm glad that you asked that question because most of your listeners have not heard of a DIL, or a deed in lieu of. It's where the homeowner voluntarily transfers the ownership of the property, the title, and all the property that's associated with it to the owner of the mortgage, big box banks, in exchange for a release from the mortgage loan and payment. A deed in lieu of is an alternative to the foreclosure and can be considered if you was not able to refinance or modify your mortgage, or if you're facing a long-term hardship like unemployment. You are behind on your mortgage payments. You owe more on your home than it's worth. You don't want to sell your home or haven't been able to sell your home. You can no longer afford your home and you're ready to move on with your life. The benefits of a deed in lieu of is it eliminates the remaining mortgage debt. There's an elephant in the room. A lot of us are throwing money at a mortgage that's just not worth it. It's like if you went out to buy furniture and you can buy the same furniture for $500, but yet you paid $1,000. So you're paying money on a mortgage that's just not worth it. Another benefit is you may be able to get a new mortgage to purchase a home in as little as 2 years than if you went through a foreclosure process, which is 7 years. If your loan is owned by Fannie Mae, you possibly can remain in the property and lease that property from the lender for a long period of time.
Wow. Say that again, please. I think this is really important for the listeners to hear.
If your loan is owned by Fannie Mae, Federal National Mortgage Association, you may qualify to lease your home through the deed for lease option with that particular lender. And you may remain in the property at a very low reduced payment, which is rent, for a long period of time.
So once you start getting these notices, probably the worst thing that you can do is just stick them in a drawer in the corner or tear them up or say, I'll deal with them later. It's really important that our listeners, if they're in this position, contact an expert so that they can get sound advice and figure out what's the best path for them to take.
Exactly, Clifford. In the finance market, in a down economic turn, you've heard the cliche, cash is king. In this particular context, communication is king. And if there's no communication, as far as the lending institution is concerned, they have liability with that particular inventory because they believe that it's vacant. Now, the process for a deed in lieu of, to qualify, you will work with your mortgage lender to complete the eligibility process, such as determining the value of the property, today's value, not the value that the lender says it is, not the value that the borrower says it is, but today's market value and how much you still owe on the property, as well as reviewing your hardship. If approved, you will need to vacate the property unless they agree to lease the property back to you, and you may be required to sign a standard pre-closing document as well as attend the closing process. Additionally, you will need to leave the home both inside and out in good condition, free of any debris, exterior trash, or damage, and all personal belongings must be eliminated. In some cases, you may be able to receive relocation assistance. What that means is they may pay you to leave towards your moving expenses and to make the transaction into new housing easier. A deed in lieu of usually takes around 90 to 120 days to complete, but this could be shorter or longer depending on your specific situation.
Okay, well, I can see there's a lot of benefits because when you first said deed in lieu of, I was like, well, why would you do that when you could just stay and they're going to foreclose anyway and you end up leaving anyway? But there's a lot of benefits to not allowing the foreclosure process to just run its course.
Exactly. When you understand the California timeline for a foreclosure, I believe that you would be able to respond more intelligently and with power. So, for example, if I may, the timeline for a non-judicial foreclosure in California. On day one, a notice of default is filed with the county recorder. Within 10 business days, the notice of default is mailed to the borrower's address. After 3 months, there's a sale date that has been established. 25 days before the sale date, there's a notice of sale sent to the borrower and to the IRS. Within 10 days from the first publication of the trustee sale, the beneficiary is requested for property directions. 14 days before the sale, there's a record notice of the trustee sale. Within 7 days before the sale date, if court action, the 7-day rule may apply, and the court action could be a bankruptcy, which will pause the foreclosure. Within 5 business days before the sale date, the expiration of the borrower's right to reinstate the loan applies. Then the sale date. The property is sold to the highest third party. If not, then the property reverts back to the loan institution, which now becomes an REO, real estate owned by the bank. And these properties can be purchased on the open market. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, before this process kicks in, as far as the notice of default, that's when you want to call a real estate specialist, a real estate practitioner that not only has experience in this arena, but make sure that they actually own a house themselves so they can feel.
I'm chuckling, but actually that makes perfect sense. If I'm a renter and can't get into a home myself, then I probably don't have that same knowledge as far as an attachment to my property, the emotional things that go on, as well as the expertise to show that I'm living what I'm saying.
Well, that's a revelation. It is a myth that these specialists have been processing these transactions not only a long time, but they may not even own a property. Mm-hmm. And if they have no experience of working with the tax assessor, then they cannot tell you how to reduce your property taxes. If they have no experience in working with the title companies, then they probably cannot explain to you what closing costs are. Most customers feel that closing costs is what they pay the realtor. Not so. Cost to purchase a home protects them. In fact, if there was a lien on the property that wasn't caught prior to that property closing escrow. So it baffles me how we choose the expertise to work with when we're not doing a thorough search of that representative background and experience.
Well, it's obvious to me that all real estate specialists aren't the same. There are those that are expert and have more experience and more success than others. And one of the things that I really like about working with you is you have a track record of success. You've been doing this for a long time. Now, I'm not calling you old or anything, man, but you've been doing this for a long time and doing it very successfully. And something else, I know you're really into empowering the people that you work with, to giving them power options, and you're very passionate about helping people.
Well, after 31 years, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And most of the bad and the ugly is the result of not being informed. Mm-hmm. And you can hurry up and do something incorrectly, or you can hurry up and wait and do it the right way. You can be right or you can be better. And the consumer should always operate from a position of strength, meaning that they know all of their options, they know all of their choices, which grants them the power to make the right decision, to move in the right way and make the right choices for them today and in the future.
Well, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. If someone's upside down in their home and has received a notice of default, what should they do?
They can call us for a telephone appointment. The hotline number is 510-222-6023. Again, that's 510-222-6023. And they can go to the website,